So this video is just gonna be like a rant video. So lately I've been having this problem with reading manga and watching anime. And if you've been reading manga and watching anime as long as I have, you probably have this exact problem I'm about to describe, which is you can predict what's gonna happen in an anime with like 90% accuracy or higher. And the fact that a lot of anime is set in high school. Let me explain my first point. So, a lot of tropes and a lot of different character archetypes get reused, right? And that obviously makes sense because these character archetypes, the setting, the way that plot lines are designed, if they work, then studios and authors are going to use the same tropes in character types. Like, let's say, tsundere, yandere, um, high school setting, main character that's kind of a loser, etc., right? These characters and plot lines and plot devices, etc., all get reused, right? And because of that, if you've watched so much anime, probably hundreds or thousands of hours like I have, then since you have this repository of anime in your mind, you kind of can predict what's going to happen just because you've seen these patterns over and over and over and over again. And so that kind of kills the excitement of anime for, us boomers. And that's why, like, you can't watch anime all the time, right? Because eventually you see the same thing over and over again. And it just gets really repetitive and boring. And, like, it's kind of just like, yeah, dude, I don't want to watch the same scene of a girl, like, getting skirt like blowing up because of the wind, and then the main character is, oh my god, and she's like, oh my god. So you've seen this like 1,000 times, 10,000 times, and it's like, oh my god. Yeah, and that brings me to another point, which is a lot. Most of the anime you watch and um is set in high school, right? And that just it gets repetitive, right? Like you see the same thing over and over again, right? It's like if I watch 10,000 anime, out of those 10,000, probably 8,000 of those are set in high school, right? And of course, that's just the nature of anime because it's geared towards teenagers, right? But, even if you're a teenager, it does get boring, right? It's like, oh my, high school again, high school again, high school again, we're in high school again. Yeah, it's just like, it's hard to enjoy it because, like, you already know what's going to happen and it's always set in high school, which is so you kind of probably turn into manga, right? If you're like me, yeah, you kind of just get tired. Like, yeah, like every freaking anime is like the same, basically. Or excuse me, not the same, but all these anime are so similar or similar to the ones you've watched before that you're just like, I don't want to like watch this again. I don't want to, because I already know what's gonna happen. And so you probably just turn into manga like me, and same problem, right? It's like it's all set in high school, kind of the same tropes, obviously, and it's like there's a lot of good manga out there that's geared that doesn't involve high school as well, but sometimes it falls on the same tropes, or it's harder to find, I should say, and yeah, it just gets really tiring. I think that's one reason I've been reading Korean manhwa as of late is that it is new because for me personally, because a lot of the setting is not set in high school. Sometimes it's usually like high school, college, 30s, or middle school maybe, right? And so there's always this wide variety of like ages and settings and like character motivations. I find like the characters they feel much more different, uh, and I think that's just the fact that, of course, this is my it's still new to me, right? Like I've only been reading Korean manhwa for like last 1 to 2 years, so it's very new. Like all the tropes and stuff that Korean manhwa writers use, is very new to me. So I'm enjoying it just because it's different and like the character motivations are different. Kind of seeing like a little insight of like Korean culture getting implanted into these stories as well is interesting because it's a lot different from manga and stuff where sometimes like well, I'll give you one example I could think of right now. It's like in Japanese manga, there's always this like, oh, my dad's on a business trip, or oh, the parents are not even in the story, right? But most of the time in Korean manhwa, not most of the time, but a lot of the time, the parents are involved somehow in the story, which is, of course, a little more interesting. And also like another thing I think of is like Korean manhwa. Like the characters always like trying to make money. It's like the main character always like all main characters are like kind of greedy with for money. So it's kind of gives a interesting insight into I guess Korean mentality about money and stuff, and like how important money is in South Korean society. And if you watch the videos on South Korean work culture, etc., then it makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of anxiety about making money because South Korea is a small country and the only way to make money is like if you're really good at school or you're like very smart because a lot of jobs are intellectual. There are blue collar jobs in South Korea, but like those are like kind of looked down upon. And you know how many Asian cultures they have this concept of like saving face and obviously a reputation, etc., etc. Right? So if you say, "Oh, I work a blue collar job," then people are look down on you. But if you work a, like, "Oh, I graduated from this really nice school. I'm working on this company," then everyone's like, "Oh, you're a respectable person in society, right?" And that's kind of gets into it. Okay, I don't know why I'm talking about this because I'm not expert on this. I shouldn't talk about this actually, but I don't know. I thought it was interesting just because I have that I've watched like videos and stuff, and I've like of like Korean culture and stuff and like society. So it kind of gives you more insight into these manhwas. Obviously, same thing with the Japanese manga. If you like watch videos on Japanese culture and stuff, then obviously it's a much richer experience because you get to experience you understand the context of cultural stuff in the mangas and like why characters act this way or like why is every single manga set in high school, right? That's another one, which is like because manga is like kind of a lot of manga is escapism or high school is looked upon very fondly in Japanese for Japanese mangaka. I don't want to like say in society because obviously manga is a very niche culture, right? Or I should say is a big subculture in Japan, but obviously most normal people are watching other stuff. Not everyone enjoys cartoons. I know that's hard to believe, but yeah. And it's just like that's just a big problem I've been having with like reading manga lately. It's just like very hard because I'm just like, man, like it's the same thing over and over and over again. It trying to drive you crazy actually. And you're just like, I want something new. And I think that's another reason I've been branching into Korean manga and also Chinese manga, as I've talked about earlier. Is that it's just different, and the way the authors express ideas are different, and their spins on like Japanese like manga tropes is interesting, and of course like a lot of it's original, of course, right? But a lot of it is inspired by Japanese manga as well. I mean, I don't know, I guess like some other things are like in Korean manhwa, there's not like as much, lolly stuff and all that other stuff. And like there is fan service. Yeah, I feel like no. Okay, it's the kind of the same level of fan service, but it's different. Yeah, just a little rant I have. I think I probably said a bunch of things that were definitely inaccurate, but it was just kind of my opinion. Uh, it's just a rant, so I didn't like obviously have all my notes together when I was making this, but that's just kind of my raw thoughts and kind of like things coming to my mind when I was thinking about like why it's like more difficult to not more difficult, but manga becomes boring after a while because so much of what is translated or made is geared specifically for that target demographic group of middle school to like high school. And so if you're not in that demographic group or you're not interested in that setting, then it gets really boring. Like one thing I think about is why like certain series get really popular. Like let's say Attack on Titan, Tokyo Ghoul, Chainsaw Man recently is like yes, those characters are young, but their whole personality is not like, oh, I'm in high school and therefore I act like this. It's like you can enjoy these characters even if you're not 14, 15, 16 and you're, going to Japanese high school, right? You can well, okay, well, you don't want to be like Aaron and like living a like apocalyptic world, but what I'm trying to say is like characters where the character is more relatable in a way is like obviously gonna hit a bigger demographic. So I think that's another reason why Chainsaw Man's really popular is just because like Denji and many of the characters are very relatable to a lot of different people, and it's not very specific. Like, oh, you have to be like yada yada this old. Like, let's say for a lot of manga readers, Denji is a relatable character. Like, oh, I'm horny and I'm lonely and I want to touch a girl. Like that's a lot of really relatable to a lot of manga readers. So I think it's one reason Chainsaw Man is popular because it's just like, oh, he's just like me for real. And yeah, it was just kind of a rant I have about like just reading so much manga that it just gets predictable. Um, Oh yeah, that's like another point, right? Like Chainsaw Man is just it's really different, right? Like it doesn't have all these tropes in every single manga and stuff. It really stands out because it doesn't follow those the tropes and other plot lines that are always used. It really stands out. It's very experimental, right? Like if you're a writer, usually you want to do that to do what's already successful, so you get your stuff published, and that's what readers want. But I think that's the reason why Chainsaw Man is successful. It's unique, and also that it does it. It's unique and it's good, right? Okay. Now it's okay. Now this is really the end. Now, okay. Thanks for listening. If this weird rant, if you have anything to say, then obviously leave a comment. If you hate me, then obviously leave a dislike. All right. Thanks.